All right. Hello, hello, hello. It looks like all of this is working this morning. I have not got on here and done a live stream in a very long time. And obviously, I'm in a completely new setup since the last time I did this. So it's all uncharted territory for me today. So if we do have anybody sitting here watching, if you'll let me know if you can hear me and see me okay, we'll make sure we got those levels going before we get started on this. I didn't do much planning for this or promotion, so I don't imagine there'll be a lot of people here, but hopefully a few people hanging out. Ivan, I see you here. Nice. Let me know if you can hear me okay. And we'll jump in here in a second once these notifications go out to folks, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do today. Got about 45 minutes or so to do just a little bit of live building here, so figured I'd take advantage of that time while I got it because it's hard to come by on Fridays. Yo, Leo, can you hear me all right? All right, looks like everything is working properly, so we'll just have to assume that it is, and if it's not, I'm sure somebody will alert me. All right, so the idea of this, I've been wanting to do this for a while, is essentially I'm constantly coming across different things online on websites that I find that I'm like, ooh, this is such a cool design or layout or functionality or whatever it may be. And I open up a sandbox install and start building and generate blocks and see if I can figure out how to recreate it, in my own way. And I'm doing that probably a couple times a week as it is. And I thought, I should really save all these and do them in some kind of video or live stream. And I think a live stream is a great idea for something like this because y'all could submit ideas or share things that you're trying to figure out, and I could work on them as well. And then I could come in here and kind of show you more in real time. I know in a lot of the more produced in air quotes, they're not very produced, but in the edited videos that I publish, obviously I'm taking out all the mistakes. I'm taking out the entire process of me figuring out exactly how it works. So I thought maybe here in doing something live would be a little bit more interactive and you could see the actual process that I go through to build these things. So let's, I'm gonna turn on my screen sharing here if I can get everything to work. And looks like it's working okay. I'm going to show you kind of the inspiration for what I want to work on today. So the other day I came across this website here as I was looking for a bank. And I don't actually like how they do some scroll jacking on this. You can see I'm scrolling right now and it's stuck on this section. However, I really do like this section where, you click on these titles, you get a little bit more context and the image over here changes. So it's almost like a tab element where you click on a headline and then all the content changes. So that's working like a tab, but it's almost working like an accordion too, where you don't see this extra content until you click on there. So I found other instances of it as well. So here yesterday I was sharing that Yabe web font site. And if we scroll down a little bit further here, they have something really similar where you click on these, the description kind of accordions out and the content of the tab changes on the left. So the best example I found of this was quite a while ago on this Vulture website. So when you click these over here, these kind of accordion up and out, and then you have all the changes on the right hand side. Obviously they have multiple images in here and some nice little animations and all that. We're probably not going to get that deep today, but I was able to recreate this basic concept inside of Generate Blocks pretty easily. So I'm essentially just calling it the Tabcordion because I don't know what else to call it. But I figured we'd jump in here today and look at how I got all this set up. Most of it is done here inside Generate Blocks, and then we have just a little bit of CSS to write and we're good to go. So just shout at me. I'm going to try to keep these comments open here on another screen if you see me looking over to the side. I'm going to try to keep those open, so if you have any questions or anything, I can try to cover those. And if you wouldn't mind, drop a little like on this stream. All right, so let's get started here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to build out as far as design-wise. We might do something similar to this Vulture one since I just did this recently, and I think it's the nicest example. So we'll drop a section in here just to get ourselves started. 8. All right, so now that we got our section in here, I think we actually need to make this kind of a light gray color as well. So we'll just go with this light gray color. The first thing we need to go in here and do is drop in a tabs block. So when you drop in the tabs, you have several different options here. It's easiest to just go ahead and start out with the vertical tabs on this since this is kind of what we're making anyways. So we'll go ahead and hit vertical tabs here, and we get this default layout. So you can see in here we have our container, our inner container, our tabs element, our tabs button, and our tabs items. So I guess we'll just go through here and start kind of setting this up, setting up the basics, and then we can start getting some content in here. All right, so for these tab buttons, as we look at kind of this vulture example, you know, here's probably the middle of the screen. So I'm gonna say this is maybe like a 40-60 type split, maybe 35-65. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out how much the tab buttons need to take up and how much the tab items need to take up. I see a question here in the chat already. We're going to try to recreate something like this, which is kind of a tab mixed with an accordion here. So I came up with a solution yesterday, so we're going to try to rebuild that. All right, so I'm going to grab this tab buttons container that wraps all these tab buttons. I'm going to change this to 100% width, but then I'm going to max it out at, let's say 35%. I think that'll give us enough there. And then the tab items should fill up the rest of that space. Okay, so let's see here. We probably also want a gap in between them. So I'm gonna go back to our tabs block, and we can use the flexbox gap here to put a gap in there, maybe 60 pixels a gap in between. We can't really see it right now. In the tab items, I wanna make sure to just have no background in this. It by default puts kind of a gray background. I wanna get rid of that. And I want to get rid of any padding in here as well. So that might be on these tab items, there's default padding in there. So we'll change that to 0. Now I'm just doing that to one tab item right now, but because on the tabs block itself, we have this set to sync tab item styles, it's going to go ahead and do those same changes to each one of the items inside of it. Now there are times when we want to actually not sync those styles, but I think in today's case, we're going to be syncing them the whole time. All right, we also need to, for all this to work, we need to change this tab button type from button to container. So when we have button, we can't nest anything inside of here. It's just the text inside of the button. But if we change this to container, we can go in there and we can start adding the description text that we're gonna have accordion in there. So it's important that we do change this to container. All right, so let's do some of our basic styling here. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this first tab, and we're gonna say the background is going to be the same as the background on the page, which I think is this one here. When it's not selected, when we hover over it, we're going to keep that same color. And then once it's the active one, we're going to change it to white. So you can see that's popping off the screen just a little bit. As far as the text, we'll just go with a dark color for the text. On hover, we'll do blue, and then back to the dark color when it's selected, which I think is kind of what they have here. So yeah, we get kind of a blue color when we hover over it. All right, so that should fix that. The next thing we need is a border on here. So I am running the new alpha versions of Generate Blocks and Generate Blocks Pro. So we do have some changes in here. If the UI doesn't look exactly like you're used to, I am running on the new version just to get used to it. So we're gonna do maybe a 1 pixel border on these. We'll do it kind of a gray color by default. When we hover, we'll go to a blue, and I think we'll just leave it the gray color when it's active. And go back and see. It looks like when it's active, it doesn't even have one. So maybe we'll just go with a white border so it blends in. Now on the Vulture one here, they do have some gap in between all these. And we can do the same thing here if we just go to this tab buttons container and scroll up here to our row gap. We could do, I don't know, maybe 8 pixels, 16 pixels of gap in between those. So that should work pretty well there. And I think the last thing we need are some rounded corners on this. So we'll go down here to our borders again. We'll link our border radius, and we'll do maybe an 8 pixel radius on these. So I think that gets us a good start there. All right, so inside of here, we want to have, let's go look at our example. We want to have a icon, we want to have a headline, and then we want to have some text that goes underneath it. So we already have our headline in here. We need to grab an icon. I did grab one off their website. It's not the exact one, but I'm just gonna copy this SVG. All right, so we'll go in here to our first heading inside here and scroll down to our icon SVG, and we'll paste that in. We can see this icon's coming in there. We need it to be quite a bit bigger though, so I'm gonna go with like 2.5 M. So we can see now the icon's next to it. We might want a little bit more padding there too. So maybe we go with like 16 pixels of padding in there. And then we can put in our first bit of text. again, we'll just copy and paste this for now. One-click deploy. And we might want to go with just a little bit heavier font. Something like that should work. All right, and then what we need underneath it is our section here to have the text, right? But we don't want this text to show all the time. So we're gonna have to write some CSS to actually do this. And what we need to do is actually put that text inside of a container so we can target that container. So what I'm gonna do is just underneath this headline block, I'm gonna hit enter and I'm gonna type in container. Now this container is gonna hold my description text. So let's just go ahead and grab some of this text here and we'll copy it and we'll paste, oops. We'll paste it in here. If I can get my fingers to work. All right, so we'll change this to a paragraph. I have some global styles here to make these text a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna do body small on that. And let's make sure to set the color of this font because I don't want it to change when we hover over it. So I'm just gonna change this to kind of our dark gray color. So that gets us fairly close, but one thing you'll notice here, they have the text kind of lined up with the heading here. There are a couple of different ways we can do this, but because we have our icon as part of that text heading, I think what we'll do is just grab this container that's holding our text and we'll give it some left margin to kind of line it up. So I was playing with this earlier and I think we were pretty close to like 75 pixels. Let's see. That gets us pretty close, maybe a little bit less, 72. You can see that lines us up pretty decently. Now we got too big of a gap here underneath this heading. What's up, Taylor? I'm showing off my Tabcordion that you helped me with. We'll get to the part here where Taylor saved the day here in a bit. So yeah, so this has some extra bottom margin on it. You can't see it in here, but you can tell if we zero that out that it got rid of it. So it's just kind of the default bottom margin in here on our paragraphs. So I want to get rid of that. Obviously, we could change this tag to a heading or whatever. I'm not so worried about the semantic HTML at this point. We're just trying to get the functionality to work. All right, so that gets us kind of the layout of our tab button there. We need to go ahead and put some content in here. So I have already uploaded some of these images. So I'm just going to go into the media library and upload one of those images. And essentially what we have set up here is our first tab. Now we can use this to kind of duplicate and make our other tabs. So if you grab, we'll grab this second tab button here. And if you click the little kebab menu and scroll all the way down, you have the option to remove tab, button, and item. So this will get rid of the button and the corresponding content that goes with it, which is usually what you want to do so you don't get out of sync with how many tab buttons and tab items you have. So now that we have just the one, I'm going to go ahead to this tab button again, and I'm going to press this plus button here to add a tab item, and we'll go ahead and do it one more time. So now we should have 3. And now it's just a matter of copying and pasting some of this content in. So we'll work on that. And if y'all have any questions or if I'm losing anybody, drop some of those in the chat and I'll try to slow down. I know once I start talking, I go kind of quick. Yeah, Taylor, what happened to not having enough time? So I have like 45 minutes between when I started this and when I got to run my kiddo out to his camp. So I thought, you know what? No excuse. I'm just going to sit here and waste 45 minutes. So I might as well get on here and do this. All right. So let's see here. We have all of that content in there. We need to switch out these images. So I'm going to upload. Nope. I'm going to replace this from the media library. Click on our third tab and replace that image from the media library. And we should be able to hit publish on here. And we can see we'll have our tabs working, but we're not going to have our accordions working. So when we hover over this, we can see the text is changing to blue. We're getting our blue outline. When we click on it, this is going to our active state and the image is on the right. So all of the tab portion of this is working just fine now. So now what we need to actually do is get in here and write some CSS to make the accordion portion work. So I'm going to do this here in the customizer just so we can kind of see the live preview here. Yeah, actually, Taylor, it's funny enough, I put this map of Richmond where we just moved to right behind me, and technically my house is not on this map. It's like, let's see, it's just to this side of the panel, like just outside the panel. So my pin would be over on the wall a little bit. All right, so what we have to do here is Actually, we can't even start writing CSS yet because we need to put some classes on all this. So let's jump back into the editor, and we need to put some classes on some things. So the first thing is just our tabs block itself. We'll go over here under advanced and under additional CSS classes. I'm going to call this Tabcordion. And I'm going to copy that just so I have that written down and don't misspell it. For our tab button, not the tabs buttons that holds all the buttons, but for the buttons itself. So we have 1, 2, 3 of those. We need to give those the class of Tabcordion-button. And I'm gonna go ahead and copy that. We'll go to the next button and paste it in there. Go to the next button and paste it in there. And then for the container that we put around this text, we need to give this a class as well. And I'm gonna do Tabcordion hyphen text. So go ahead and copy that, go to this container, same thing here, this container, same thing here. And now once we have that, we can start writing CSS. So essentially all we need to do is put the Tabcordion selector on the tabs block. On each one of the buttons, we did Tabcordion-button. And then on the containers that are going to hold kind of the description information, we did Tabcordion text. So we added all those classes to these here inside the editor. All right, we'll go back to our front end, refresh to make sure we have those changes in there, and now we can start writing some CSS. All right, so essentially what we want to do here is we want to collapse down that text, and then we want to open that text back up once we're on the selected item. So what I wanted to do as I was trying to approach how to figure this out is I wanted to take advantage of the way the tabs already work by default inside Generate Blocks. Essentially, it's going to put a class on the active one that says GB-block-is-current. So GB block is current. So what we can do is kind of tap into that and then be able to, show or hide this information. Now, I actually came across a YouTube video from Kevin Powell. Let's see, YouTube, Kevin Powell animate height. So I think this is the one here. So let me pause that. I'm going to drop this link inside the comments here. It is a really cool little video. He kind of shows how you typically can't animate from height 0 to height auto. It's just gonna quickly go from one to the other without any kind of smooth transition in between. But with this method that he showed in this video, we can actually animate that and make it nice and smooth, which is why I wanted to go this route. So what we're going to end up doing is kind of following the directions Kevin had in that video. We're going to actually make the description text, the container that's wrapping it, we're going to make it display grid and make the grid rows 0 rows tall. So that's what's going to collapse this all down. And then once the GB block is current class is added to one of those, it's going to take it from the row being 0 FR tall to being 1 FR tall. And then we just have to kind of hide the overflow on it and add the transition on there and we'll be good to go. So it's a lot of talking, but let's just get in here and start writing this. So I'm going to do Tabcordion and we'll do Tabcordion-button. And inside that we have the Tabcordion text. Now there are some ways, and Taylor, he was sharing some different ways to write the CSS where we don't have to be that explicit about everything. But I just decided that in a video, not having just div with a div nested with a div nested is a little bit easier to follow here. So, all right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a display of grid. We're gonna do grid template rows of 0 FR. And let's see, 0, there we go. So once we put 0 in there, you can see that now these buttons have collapsed because it's no longer accounting for the text that's in here. Now we're gonna have to write some more CSS here, but I kind of want to go in order of how I'm thinking about this. So we need to do Tabcordion button. We have Tabcordion text, and inside it we just want to select everything. So here is where we want to do our overflow of hidden, and that's going to get rid of all of that text, because essentially what we've done is made that container that's holding all the description text, we've made it 0 height, and now we're saying, okay, everything that's inside of it, just turn the overflow to hidden so it won't be shown at all. So what we have to do now is just tell it, okay, whenever the tab is active, then we want to change that to a 1FR instead of 0 for the grid row. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So what we do is Tabcordion. I should really copy and paste this. All right, so we have Tabcordion, then the Tabcordion button, and right on top of that, we need to do a period and do the GB block is current. And this is what's going to allow us to just write this rule for when we're on the active tab. So inside that, we want to grab the Tabcordion text, and we can write our one line of CSS, which is grid template rows 1FR. So this pretty much fixes this to work as a solution at this point. We can see as we click on these, it's showing and hiding that text. And really, show and hide is kind of not exactly what's happening. Like I said, it's just taking it from 0 height to whatever the auto height that it needs to be to fit the text. And this is actually where I got stuck working on this yesterday, and Taylor came in and, ooh, my screen froze. Let's see what happened here. We might have to back up a little bit then. This happens to me sometimes when I'm running, doing videos as well. Okay. All right, so let's see. Where was I when it froze? Okay. So we're going to go back just a step here. I know you probably heard all that and didn't see any of it. So, all right, let's just back up here. We'll rewrite this. All right, so I know we at least had this first part of it written here. So we have the grid template row set to 0. And what we need to do next is set the overflow to hidden. So I'm not going to explain all this a ton again since I just did it. Button, accordion, text, overflow, dang it. Overflow of hidden. Well, I've mistyped something here. Now I'm all flustered since my screen froze. What a bummer. Okay, there we go. So all we've done here is target that text that's inside the little description and said overflow hidden. And now what we got to do is rewrite this rule for making the active one 1FR tall. So the row needs to be 1FR tall. So what we have here is our Tabcordion, the button, and we're appending it here with this GB block is current to make sure we're only targeting the ones that are actually the active tab. And what we do here is just do the grid template rows, and we do 1FR. And we can see now that we have this 1FR, it's going to go ahead and basically auto height all of these things as we have the active one. Yeah, sorry about that freezing, guys. That's a total bummer. I don't know why my OBS does that. Sometimes it will just lock the screen and nothing changes on there. I can't tell you how many different videos I've had to re-record 2 or 3 different times because I didn't realize the screen was frozen inside of OBS. All right, so this is actually where I got stuck yesterday. And thankfully, Taylor came to the rescue. He typically does. We have a little group thread of a bunch of Generate Blocks heads like myself and Taylor and Jonathan, and we kind of share stuff back and forth. And what I really wanted to be able to do was get this to animate nicely. And I had written CSS to get to this point, but it wasn't quite written like it is now. And whatever I was doing to try to get that transition on there wasn't working. So thankfully, Taylor went in here and rewrote this CSS to make it actually work. And all we have to do is add one line on here. So on this first selector here, what we're going to do is do a transition. We're going to transition the grid template rows, and then we can choose the duration. So we can say 500 milliseconds. We can choose the timing function. We'll just say ease in. And we see now as we click on these, oh, look, it's maybe not the ease in. That's not working quite as slick as it was before. So what have I done wrong? I'm going to grab the text I had from before and just paste it in there. There we go. Now it's working. So what did I do differently? 0, maybe it was FR. Okay, that made the difference. So I had this grid template rows at 0, which was probably not what I needed. I needed 0 FR. So that was the difference. We need to make sure we have 0 FR here. And I will, yeah, thanks, Taylor. I'll drop all this CSS maybe in a pinned comment after this live stream's over, so you don't have to go back and write all this. It's just gonna be a matter of making sure you line up the selectors in the right places. So we can see now with that animation in there, these look really slick. Just the way they open and close is real smooth. Now, the challenge to these is, obviously this part's not too hard. There are a few steps. I was recreating this morning and it was, I don't know, 10 minutes to recreate one of these once you know what you're doing. Obviously, when I'm sitting here trying to explain it and when my screen freezes and I have to redo it again, it takes a little bit longer. And you could always set this up as some kind of like reusable block or block pattern or something so you don't have to do it 500 times. But one of the biggest challenges is getting this to work well responsively. So let's take a look at, I didn't even look at the way Vulture's doing it on theirs, but let's take a look at what they're doing and we'll try to come up with our own solution here. And I can kind of show you some of the issues we run into. Okay, so obviously their background and everything changes here. We're not going to get quite that fancy. But you can see what they've done is put the tab buttons on top and the image down below. And that's totally fine. I've seen on some of these other ones, I think on this one, they did the opposite. They put the image on top with the tabs below it. And I think either way you run into this issue is if you're on a mobile device and all you can see is this on your screen right here, right? And you click this, you don't know that image is changing up above. So if there's something critical inside that image, something mission critical, important that people have to see, they're never going to see that that's in there. And we're going to have a similar problem here. I'm just going to put this on maybe an iPhone. So this one's not too bad because we're keeping that image in the viewport the whole time, which is definitely helpful. Like I said, they've done a lot of changes to this. The icon is gone here now. They've completely changed the background color, the color of the text and all that. We're not going to get that fancy, but we can go ahead and set this up to stack appropriately and see if we can get this to where we can keep everything in the viewport at the same time, because I think this Vulture one is a much better example than the Yabe one where we can completely, let's see, let's get it on iPhone 2 for a fair comparison. I mean, if we're clicking down here, we don't even see that image is changing. So I want to try to keep all those things in the viewport at the same time. So let's jump back in here to our mess and see if we can make that work. So we'll go ahead and go to our tablet view and we need to see here. So the tab buttons, we're going to want to change this to 100% width. And we're going to have to change this tabs because it's set to flex right now. We're going to either have to let it wrap or we're going to have to change its display to block. So if we do wrap, that should fix that there. So now we can see our tabs are going all the way across and our image is down here. While we're here, we can add some row gaps. So maybe, I think we did 16 in between those so we can just kind of match it. So we can see the image down here. Now, of course, oh, come on, not my email. We want the text to be above and the image to be below. So what we can do is just reverse this flex direction. I thought we could. Row, column. Oh, you know what? We could just change that. Let's go back here. We could change this to column and then reverse it. Yeah, so we don't need it to wrap. Let's just change the flex direction to column. Then we make it wrap. So now the image is on top and the text is on the bottom. Okay, so we don't need to make a wrap. Man, I am really confusing myself. Okay, so we want the text on top, the image on the bottom, right? Because that's what they have there. So if we just change that to the flex direction of column instead of row, that fixes all of our problems right there. We can see all of that's working. And my guess is if we go down to mobile, looks like our tab buttons are screwed up now. So those are on flex direction of row. We need to change those to column. And we can see now why they got rid of the icon on mobile, because now with that giant gap here, it's making these so tall. So I think what we'll do actually is just go to our container here and get rid of that left margin. We'll just change this to 0. We'll do it on all 3 of them. That will help. Let's go ahead and update that. See, we're not seeing them go away. The accordion effect isn't happening inside the editor there, so we can't tell how much space it's going to take up. But okay, so if we go to tablet here, all that seems to be working just fine. And we go to mobile. Yeah, and I mean, that keeps it all on the screen. So I honestly think it's about as good as you're going to get. I really don't have any problem with that as far as kind of the user experience. I think the other question here is going to be accessibility. So I'm just going to tab through here. We have, by default, the tab block is going to be pretty accessible. So I don't really want to turn on my screen reader and have it screaming at us. But my guess is, we can obviously tab through these. If we press enter or return on it, it's going to open up those tabs. So that's going to work pretty similarly if somebody's just keyboard navigating. So I don't think keyboard navigation is an issue here. I mean, obviously what this reads out is going to be important as well. But we'd have to turn on the screen reader to do that. But honestly, I don't think we have any giant issues here. I think it's actually pretty decent. That's one of those things that I've gotten better and better about coming up with a solution like this, and then thinking like, okay, what about accessibility? And because there for a while, I wouldn't even think about that. I'd go ahead and publish this and tell everybody about it and start using on sites before I even question the accessibility. So I've made the leap from that to at least getting finished and going, hey, what about accessibility on here? What I really need to get to is, thinking about that from the very beginning, because we're going to end up with something so much more accessible if we're thinking about how the accessibility is going to work from the very beginning. Now, I'm not an accessibility expert, so it's hard for me to say if this is perfect or not, but based on what I can see here and what I know about accessibility, I feel like this is at least a decent solution, and better than probably most. Let's see what happens. We can test here. Hopefully Vulture's done a good job on this. So I'm actually tabbing through. I just tabbed through that entire element, and you never see keyboard focus on any of it. It linked me. So I actually had keyboard focus to this powerful API and hit enter. And instead of it opening that tab, it just took me to the link since this button is linked. But yeah, we can't even see any of these elements gain focus. I'm tabbing through them all right now. Basically nothing gains focus, which is obviously not great. So I feel like we're doing better than that. This one we can see focus tabbing through. If we click enter, it is opening those, which is the expected behavior I would want, and pretty similar to what we're seeing in ours. And let's try on the Yabe one. All right, so let me get on something where I can make sure I can tab through appropriately. All right, we're tabbing through all those logos now. Wonder if they'll add a as seen on the admin bar since we talked about it. All right, so that tabbed me right past everything. So I'm here on this Jorn's logo, and when I hit tab one more time, it's taking me down here to all the integrations, which you can tab through some of them, but not all of them. Yeah, interesting. So keyboard navigation wise, it just completely skips this area. So if you were trying to keyboard navigate this page and wanted to read any of this content, you're kind of screwed, I think. So not that we should base on, is our accessibility better than somebody else's? That means it's good. Not necessarily, but at least we know we're doing some decent things here by being able to tab through and open some of these up. So definitely helpful. But all right, so let's see here. Now that we've made it through that, I'm gonna go back into OBS here. We'll go back to screen. All right, fantastic. Well, sweet. Well, we didn't have many people on this stream, it doesn't look like. I think I saw maybe 7 at the peak. So I think scheduling these things a little bit more in advance would be helpful. I don't want 2 of me in the screen. There we go. scheduling these things in advance would definitely be more helpful to make sure to get the word out. But I would love to know, kind of get y'all's feedback on this, building something out in real time. We can go over, different designs and stuff. I actually had posted inside of like a post inside YouTube asking about doing some, I have the table membership dashboard where there's a lot of like restricted content and stuff. That was something people seem to be interested in learning about. I know Jonathan did a video on that not too long ago, which was really great and a completely different approach than what I took. So I was thinking maybe next week, if I do one of these build lives again, we could tackle doing something like that. I ended up using nothing but a bunch of free plugins to control all the access and the different user roles, and automatically when people log in, going to the right dashboard, not seeing any of the wrong content, being sent to login pages. If they try to access content that's restricted, they don't have access to, it gives them a message, hey, you don't have access to this. Here's where you can register, or whatever it may be. So definitely something I'd like to explore on here one day if that's something people are interested in. All right, well, I guess that's it for today. We'll wrap it up. I appreciate everybody that came and hung out with me today. Hopefully everybody learned a little something. If you would, drop a like on the stream. It really helps out. We're getting super close. Let's see. I'm thinking by July we will hit 5,000 subscribers. So chances are, if you're watching this live, you're already subscribed. But if you're watching this later and haven't subscribed, we'd love to have you as a subscriber. Hopefully get to that 5,000 number pretty soon. All right, fantastic. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Don't work too hard today, and we will catch you guys all next week inside the group. All right, bye-bye.